welcome to this episode of eCommerce Australia. This week's VIP guest has a long background in digital. We spent the last 6 of those as founder and CEO of Vudoo, which we'll learn more about today. He also announced yesterday global expansion with their first international office opening in London. So an absolute heap going on. Really thankful that he's taken the time to jump on the podcast. So welcome to the show, Nick Morgan.
Thank you, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be here in a week where my head's spinning.
That's good. That's good, mate. We might be able to knock you out with some hard-hitting questions and
Go for it. I love it.
See how you're up to, mate. But I'd like to sort of spend a couple of minutes just getting to know you a little bit. So,
Sure.
are you born and bred in Melbourne, or what's the sort of background for you?
Born Sydney, raised Bendigo, which is an odd combination. But I consider myself to basically be a country kid. Grew up in the country, and then went to university in the country for a while, and then took off overseas for a long stint, and then ended up back in Melbourne, and ended up working in the early days of e-commerce, which was a bit of a Wild West moment in Australia.
Yeah, I could imagine. What were you doing overseas? Was it sort of a travel work holiday?
Travel work holiday.
Yeah.
I was in a completely different industry. I worked in corporate and hospitality, and some pretty interesting hospitality across a few different countries. Opened a lot of venues from some of the investors, and then came back to Australia going, what am I going to do? And had always had a really creative kind of bent, and was really sucked into kind of the whole tech space. And this is like the mid-noughties.
Yep.
And landed, I didn't land the job. I did land the job, but I saw an opportunity to join a small design firm, and they were really innovative guys, 2 partners, and I was like their first employee. And that agency, we just grew and took off, and we kind of lent right into, e-com. We went from designing corporate, catalogs or, chemical drum labels to being asked, can you design an email? And we're like, why would you want to design an email? Oh, well, if we get everybody's names and put them in a CSV, we can send that email and we can maybe market to them. And we're like, oh, there's something in that.
Yeah.
So that was my first foray into kind of digital marketing and e-com. And the e-com was like, well, hold on a second, can you design these websites? Well, I guess we can design a website, and then that's web design, and then all of that really early stuff, I was part of, and then I was really fortunate to be part of teams that I consider teams because we worked so closely with a number of Australian retailers, and we took them online for the first time.
Yep.
And it was just an explosion of revenue, and it was really exciting. It was fast paced and great time to be in the space. So that's where I landed when I came back from overseas.
Yeah, nice. Very interesting. It would have been, I can kind of empathize with the challenges even now of trying to educate some clients on digital. I can imagine back then, that might have been very, very difficult, or you get those early adopters that are happy to give anything a go.
Both. There was early adopters. Like I still talk about the fact that in 2008 when the iPhone came out, I would be what I would be reading in the morning after I woke up, I'd be selling to Australian retailers by lunchtime. Like we were just learning on the fly, and there was then a handful of them would be adopting it, and a handful would be like, nah, too early for us. But those ones that had adopted it have done very, very well. They moved, and it set them up, and they're household names now. And this was well before Amazon, decided to come to this shore. So, yeah, it was a real education kind of experience, as well as selling at the same time.
Yeah, and do you we'll get into Vudoo in a minute, but is that are you finding that now with the clickable cart and one-click shopping through the video and the interactivity with that? Are you finding that same?
I've been laughed out of a lot of boardrooms.
Yeah, well,
no doubt.
That's it.
No doubt. Still laughed out of boardrooms.
There's a saying that someone who laughs last or something has the last laugh. So let's hang our hat on that.
Yeah.
Mate, and what do you, before we get into the business stuff, how do you sort of typically spend a weekend? Working, I guess.
No, I do. No, look, I work pretty religiously Monday to Friday. So I wake up working, and I think about work-life integration. It's not really work-life balance. It's integration. So, I've got two small kids. So my wife works full time like I do. So we're working and raising a family. It's tough at times, but you've got to really work hard together.
Yep.
I work pretty religiously during the day, solid, and then I'll get back on the tools at night. And with my team now in London and growth overseas, like in places like Dubai and that, I'm working quite late. So I work pretty hard Monday to Friday, and that allows me to really switch off on the weekends. Um, it's something I've kind of picked up from Gary Vee years ago, which is like he works just around the clock Monday to Friday, and then the weekends are just for family. And I was like, I think I can make that work. So
Yep.
I pretty much I'm fortunate enough to I've put that kind of process in place, and I stick to it. I still, if I've got to take board calls and stuff from my chairman and bits and pieces, we do it.
Yep.
But yeah, I pretty much stick to family on the weekends.
Okay, oh, that's good. Good to hear. Sometimes I get a bit nervous asking that question because founders and that they just work and that's
Yeah.
yeah.
Look, and I could work around the clock.
Yep.
And I'm geared to work around the clock. I love what I do. I love
Yep.
my work.
Yep.
My wife doesn't want to hear the name Vudoo at home very often.
Yeah.
But she allows me to whisper it sometimes. But yeah, I've got to put those pieces in place that allow me to have a good life, work life integration, and be able to, you also need to be able to just digest and download and reflect
Yep.
on what you're trying to achieve, and you need pauses in your life to be able to do that. You can't I don't believe if you're constantly doing 100 hours a week and constantly working, you're not going to have the time to reflect on what you're actually trying to do.
Yeah.
From small pieces to the big pieces.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. So, mate, let's get into the Vudoo story. We were chatting off air that you started about 6 years ago, but there was a turning point in COVID where you pivoted a little bit towards that. So, how did Vudoo come about, and sort of it grow into what it is today?
So Vudoo, I had a co-founder. There was two co-founders, one to build it, one to sell it. And my co-founder at the time was he's a very good friend now, and we were pretty much business associates back in the day. And he brought an idea to me back and said, look at this interactivity stuff. And this was 2014, 2015, and I'd never seen it. In all my years of digital marketing and e-com, I had never come across it, and I was kind of dumbfounded. How did I miss this? And when I saw it, it just crystallized so much for me, and it really inspired me. And so I doubled down on my research, and I was running my own small brand agency at the time, doing really good digital branding for like Invictus Games, Leica Cameras, Melbourne Writers Festival, just some really nice stuff.
Yep.
Because brand in the digital space was pretty crappy, so that's why that was our kind of what we did. But I saw this and it just blew my mind, and I just saw so much opportunity. And in my research, I came across a statistic, and I talk about this quite often. I came across this statistic by Cisco, which was by 2019, and this is 2015. By 2019, 80% of the global internet traffic would be streamed video. And that just like blew my mind, right?
Yeah.
Internet traffic. So the world was just, and we're talking petabytes of video, like the world was just going to be consumed by video. And for me, the biggest problem that I saw there was and coming from e-commerce, which is about conversion rate, user journeys, action behavior. Let's drive the consumer to buy, to activate, to put some details in. Let's drive behavior. I didn't see the video driving any behavior. I saw it as still a very passive experience. And so then when I connected, the interactivity now with the statistic, and then I dug into it, I came across a whole bunch of interactive video companies globally, lots. And I was like, oh, geez, this is a flooded market and a competitive market. And I got asked that a lot by a lot of different companies, investors way back when we started, saying, why would you want to enter? I remember being laughed out of a boardroom going, you're crazy entering. There's so many different competitors in this market.
Yeah.
But what I uncovered was that most of these interactive video companies were very small operations, and they were really selling a product that was a race to the bottom.
Right.
sign up for a free video and then it's, 19.99 a month. And they were cheapening essentially a really incredible experience and something that actually drives behavior to just being based really about just basic call to action stuff.
Yep.
It was cheap and performance based. Whereas I actually went through more of my research, uncovered the fact that we're actually interactivity can from a human computer interaction perspective, which is study of kind of interface design and how humans interact with computers, part of it, we can actually drive behavior. And to me, I saw that as a massive opportunity. So you've got 80% of the global internet traffic being streamed video. What if we're able to mobilize that population to actually interact with the screen?
Yep.
Right? I know it's crazy. Well, it's a video screen. What if we actually got interactivity, and actually like lots of were trying to do it. And so I thought we could actually do something where we could have a product which is positioning was around driving behavior rather than just call to actions.
Yep.
And there's more value here. And so we really lent into that behavioral analytics side of things and built a product really about driving behavior through interactivity rather than it being a performance-based marketing tool or that can, put a call to action.
Yep.
So I kind of flipped the positioning on it.
What when you talk about behavior, sorry to cut you off there.
No,
When you
it's
talk
right.
about behavior, just for people that might not be kind of aware of what you do, what are you talking about behavior? So they're watching a video on whatever platform it is, and then something comes up with a clickable option to then click off and take some action. Is that sort of what you're talking
Yeah,
about from a behavior point of view?
and build a lending from ecom and interface and I guess web design and from a user journey perspective and allow for user journeys to be implemented into the video. So the narrative becomes multifaceted, right? It's not just linear. All of
Yeah.
a sudden they can click and, you akin to say choose your own adventure. That's what you're allowing it to do. So we've built a lot of capability to be able to create choose your own adventure and to create what we call user journeys inside video. And when you provide the ability to an audience member or user to choose their narrative, they become super engaged.
Yeah.
And they choose their journey and their narrative. And as they're doing that, they're clicking through this video and they're clicking on points of interest. We collect all that data. And then we present that back as a report on how has that audience member physically engaged with your content, not just stared at it, not just held
Yeah.
your attention. And that's why we can drive up to 44% brand uplift for a product or a brand because we're simply engaging the consumer longer. It's not rocket science, right? It's simply by allowing for an authentic, engaging, interactive experience, you keep the user in that piece of content longer. And so it's a really high performing piece of content.
Yeah, that the analytics would be really powerful now that you've spelt that out and explained that. It's the analytics around that. I was looking at the was it the Vogue Moe
Yeah.
Chandon
Yeah.
sort of content, and I had a bit of a click around myself, and now with that lens that you've just explained there so well, yeah, understanding that each time I clicked on something, that they would have that data that they can then, they can measure engagement, and they can also see, oh, do we need to create something else now more specifically for this because they clicked on that? So
Yep.
I can see,
they can put
yeah,
two products in a video in front of an audience, and they can see what of those products resonated and the different features of that product, and can resonate and how is that, what's valuable to that audience member. Before they would just be staring at it going, what was our total view time? Now we actually know what they actually value. Which
yeah,
brand, what do you want? Do you want to know how long everyone left the video, or would you like to actually know the features of the product, what was actually resonating with the audience most? So
yeah,
it's quite powerful. And then the segue is then in 2020, in wanting to lean more into commerce, seeing where I saw commerce going and I saw TikTok going and I saw these major brands like the major social platforms. We talk about behavior. I clearly saw that these major platforms were going to be driving a new behavior in consumers globally with a generation. And they're doing that, right? And there's an
yep,
expectation now of a generation that you can now interact with a video interface and you can be social with it, you can engage with it, you can communicate, and now you can shop inside that interface too. So
Yep.
that, that I saw that quite clearly. I also saw an opportunity for us is to, if we were able to bring a commerce opportunity and bring that into our product and connect that to the behavioral analytics and the interactivity, we can drive the behavior to a point of conversion, which then we can allow for the conversion to happen. And that's the game changer for us, because no one had done that. Nobody, what I couldn't find was there was a lot of shoppable video, which has been around for quite some time.
Yep.
I call it browsable video with a link. It's not actually shoppable coming from ecom. To me, ecom, shoppable is a transaction, hard
Yep.
transaction. That's shoppable, right? So
Yep.
nobody had actually made an interface outside of, say, one of the big social platforms, and still a lot of them don't have it. There's only one or two. No one had actually created an in-stream checkout inside the video. So we can drive behavior, we can drive awareness. So if you think of top of funnel and bottom funnel, we can
Yep.
drive awareness, we can drive into conversion, but Vudoo can also then can facilitate the transaction in real time. So the
Okay.
customer now, what we were able to build, the customer now never needs to leave. So
Yep.
that opened up a whole new space for us, because
Yeah.
that meant we could fix a lot of the issues that were happening with a lot of clicking and around the internet and driving referrals and affiliate, and the metrics behind those are pretty dire at times.
Yeah.
Whereas if we're actually inspiring the audience or the consumer with the content, and we can actually drive them to a conversion and facilitate the conversion. So we're allowing that audience member to convert at the point of inspiration. We
Yep.
actually end up with a much higher performing piece of content.
Yeah. Fantastic. And my next question was around sort of how it's driving sort of e-commerce transactions, which you kind of answered.
Yeah, right.
But
Sorry,
have you?
jumped the gun there.
That's all right. So have you got any kind of, I guess, case studies or real life examples of brands that have, have taken up, working with Vudoo, and they've seen an uplift in their conversions, and they've, obviously been able to attribute that back to, Vudoo and the platform itself. Yeah, have you got any sort of examples that you can
Yeah,
kind of
I
let us?
won't. Obviously, I'm not going to talk to specific figures relating
Yep.
to brands, but we launched our commerce offering with Moet Chandon and Vogue and News Corp, which is incredible. And really, that they really got behind us. That team there, led by Paul Blackburn and Pippa Leary, the managing director of product, they really saw and bought into our vision, and they're quite visionary themselves. But we launched with Moet Chandon, and it was a cracking example. They've continued to run campaigns, and now there would be 20 or 30 different brands that have been running campaigns across the News Corp network. We're now working with other publishers as well. We're now about to onboard our first publishers in Europe and Middle East. And to speak specifically to real life examples, what we see as a general rule, two of the metrics that we live by is the fact that we can drive brand uplift by anywhere from 37 to 44%. Really significant brand
Well,
uplift. At the
yep.
same time as delivering a transactable experience, which we find that probably 70% of the time, our transaction rate of our shoppable interface is conservatively double the transaction rate of the website we're integrated with. So
Wow.
you've
Okay.
got brand X and they're selling Y product.
Yep.
If they're running that across a publisher network or a content and they're using Vudoo, 70% of the time, I would say we're delivering double the transaction rate.
Wow. That's massive.
And and we've got all the use cases. We've got solid use cases and solid data. From the brand perspective, we've worked really closely with News, and we've had Kantar run a third-party report on that, which shows those numbers. And then we've got the hard data from running 30, 40 campaigns with News across their network, which have been exceptional. And it's all in the data, right? The data doesn't lie. So, it's not. I don't think it's. I'm not sure. I don't think it's rocket science. I don't think that Vudoo is this exceptional. When by no means a silver bullet, right?
Yep.
No, by no means. We're driving sustainable, incremental new revenue growth, right? What I think what's powerful about Vudoo is that we simply allow the consumer to purchase at the point of inspiration.
Yeah.
And so they're not being pulled all over the net. They're not being referred to a website and then getting lost in that website, or then getting pulled back and shifted here, and then advertising inspires and they go to another website.
Yeah.
They've navigated to that content piece on that title on that website for a reason. As an audience member, they might have been pulled there. They're there consuming that piece of content. They've been inspired by a piece of content or advertising that's transactable, and they've transacted in the moment, and they've gone back to reading their content.
Yeah.
And they've focused on what they've wanted to buy or a number of products by adding to cart inside interface, but they haven't been distracted by being pulled away to the brand website. Now, brands will say, well, we want that traffic, right? We pay handsomely for that traffic. And I'd say, yes, you have. But if we can improve a percentage of that traffic, and we can improve a percentage of your sales and keep them on that, by keeping them on that publisher who you've already paid that publisher for the advertising, if we can increase a solid percentage of that traffic and drive more sales from it, wouldn't you want to do that?
Yeah.
Or would you just want to keep doing what you're doing?
And so obviously this is an e-commerce podcast. So I have a lot of small to medium, some large, but small to medium, the analytics is telling me anyway, business owners that are running their e-com businesses sort of up to $1 million and a few plus. So how would they use this technology? Is there, what's the sort of user journey for them if they're interested in kind of deploying something like this at some point?
I think, look, we work with enterprise customers. We're integrated in most of the enterprise, e-com stack. So we have direct integrations with Salesforce, Magento, HCL, SAP Hybris, now Shopify, BigCommerce. We're working with a lot of publishers in Australia now that can actually put together really effective campaigns. And I know for a fact that the team at News Corp are killing it. Our media are killing it. NZME in New Zealand are doing incredible things with our product and helping their advertisers of small, medium, large actually create solid traction across their networks by using our product. I think that's one of the best places to start. We're always happy to speak directly, but sometimes the positioning of our product and the effort that's required to mobilize and get the most out of it is geared towards enterprise. So the small and medium companies might struggle a bit. But that doesn't mean they can't get access to it. And if they go to one of their publishers or maybe one of the small independent agencies in Australia, we haven't really started working with the big agencies yet. We're working with some really amazing small agencies, the user-generated content agencies, social agencies. That's they can get access to our product, and then they're getting the know-how and the ability. We're really software. Whereas if they're going to the premium publishers or some small independent agencies, they're getting the service and the knowledge and everything to mobilize our product.
Yeah, 100%. Do you think that technology that you have in time will trickle down? So as I say, they can work with some of your agency partners as well to take up that. But do you think there is an evolution where this becomes a little bit more mainstream for pure e-com brands, of a medium size to start with, I guess, that have that content and need that better data?
100%. I think content commerce and commerce media is exploding. I think the way also I'd answer that is how is it going to be driven and trickled down? And it starts at a global level at the top. Now, if we take the retail media space, which is a formidable space, it's growing faster than social, faster than search, and it's going to outpace both of them in the coming years. Already, those retail media networks, which a lot of major retailers, there's 600 retail media networks globally already, right? We know for a fact already there is major retailers on a global level asking the question, this top of funnel and bottom funnel and closed loop kind of transactable attribution model, we love it. The ROAS here is incredible. This concept we love. Where else can we do this? Where
Yeah.
else can we get that? Because we can only get that in the retail media network. Can we
Mm.
get it somewhere else? And I'm in New York next week at New York Ad Week, and I've got meetings with a number of retailers and a couple of think tanks in the US specifically that are asking this question, going, we want to get that top of funnel, bottom funnel, and transactable attribution. We want that elsewhere. And I think we're going to start seeing that more and more, and then you're going to start to see it trickle down because it's going to become very, very prevalent. A lot of the big platforms, the big enterprise and big platforms will be spreading this over the next few years, and it will only just become quite the norm. We know, TikToks and TikTok Shop is driving an entire generation to engage in an interface and to shop an interface.
Yeah.
How could potentially a small retailer leverage that now? Well, they could potentially use our product to create an interactive shoppable video on their website, which if they were, say, on Magento or Shopify, they could actually interact with that product, our product, on their homepage of their website, and then add all that to their cart and then check out. That's how they
Yeah.
could actually use our product now, and they would be well ahead of the game because it will be the norm over the next 18 months, 2 years, as that retail media network just has a massive influence on the rest of the market.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And how, like, question without notice here, um, how would this work in with live shopping? Because obviously that's sort of
Yep.
bigger internationally than what it is here in Australia at the
Yeah.
minute. I think
I get asked this a
brands
lot. I get asked this a lot.
do you?
And my answer is I'm staying in my lane, Ryan. I'm staying in my lane.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, look, it's a massive market in China. It's a massive growing market in India. It hasn't had the same reach here. Why? I don't know the answer, to be truthful. I think it's a cultural behavioral thing, which is just it's almost grown. It was almost like one of the first offerings when it came to e-com
Yep.
in China. So it's kind of cemented itself as the way to shop. Whereas perhaps in the Western world, we've come up through desktop in shops into responsive, into mobile, we've come the other way. There's definitely more of it happening. There's definitely companies that are providing a really great live shopping experience. It's not something we do.
Yep.
We're very clear about what we do. We do native content, and our products can completely programmatic as well. So our product can be used within a number of DSPs, and actually
Yep.
be trafficked across ad networks. So we can make
Okay.
an ad in fully traffic, which is a pretty incredible proposition. But that's our strength.
Yep.
Um, but
Yeah.
live shopping, I think again, it will trickle down and you'll see more. And there's some pretty cool companies doing it.
Yeah. And how do you partner? So you mentioned how you did with Nike, but generally speaking, do brands come to you with content ideas, and then you guys work together on what content works best and come up with a strategy? Do they have their content already done, and it's basically comes over to you to kind of implement and add those clickable links and add the commerce component to it? How does the
It would be,
strategy work?
it's both.
Yeah.
It's both, really. Because what's exciting is if there's a brand that has a library and they've made a significant investment into that library of content, they now have a whole new world, right? They can look at editing it differently. They can look at combining it. They can use Vudoo to piece together different types of content and create user journeys and user pathways, and they can reignite that content and make it and get more out of that investment in that content,
Yeah.
whilst they start planning to shoot specific content, right?
Okay.
Whilst they start working with, where they're producing content themselves, or they're working with really dynamic new companies that are producing content at scale, like Scene TV, and these companies can actually create content really, really rapidly and really super engaging. So they actually come to us with both, and we work really closely with our brands and companies to provide that strategy and help them. We've got a really engaged customer success team that can provide a lot of that thought leadership.
Yeah, brilliant. Two more questions, mate. How big is the team out of interest?
It's not a huge team. We're sitting at around 30 at the
Okay.
moment, and that'll grow to with the off, we're opening an office in New York between now and Christmas, so that'll probably
Nice.
go out to about 35, and then over the course of the next 12 months, we'll start scaling out those. We've got basically the three regional offices, which is New York, London, and Australia, between Melbourne and Sydney for APAC. But we'll start scaling out those regions from those 3 points. Yeah, so it's not a huge
I
team,
see.
but I'm mindful of it's a very efficient team. Um, I haven't just raised a ton of capital and just hired people for people's sake. We're very capital efficient, and yeah, the team's very high performing and pretty tight. So yeah.
Brilliant, mate. That's sounds like a great success story born out of we're going to call it Bendigo or Melbourne. We're not going to get
Melbourne,
we're
bit of
not going to
Melbourne, bit of
attribute
Bendigo, bit of Sydney.
we're not attributing anything to Sydney.
No, no.
No,
Okay, well, we'll scratch that.
no. And last question before I let you go, mate. Where do you see your industry evolving over the next kind of 2 to 5 years, and Voodoo? What can we expect once we?
I genuinely see there's going to be a massive shift in the way consumers shop, and it's being driven by large, major tech companies. Um, you you are going to see there's going to be some major changes with the with social platforms. They're going to align more with TikTok. They're
Yeah,
going to some of these social platforms are going to struggle in different territories. They're not going to be able to operate, say, a shop or a checkout. We've seen that with TikTok. TikTok Shop's been banned in Indonesia. They want better competition, but that's not going to be the same everywhere. You are going to see you're over the course of the next 18 months to 2 years, you're going to see every major social platform release a checkout.
yeah.
And
Th-
they are going to be driving transactions, and they're going to be owning the transaction and owning everything that happens within that platform. And that is going to then influence the consumer even more to say, well, wherever I go, so whether I'm on that social platform putting together some kind of board, or I'm listening to something there, or I'm watching that, or I'm engaging in this, I can check out and shop and check out where I am. And so then wherever else I go, if I'm on this magazine or that title, or I'm in that AR game, or I'm here, you will be able to shop wherever you are.
It's that's very, very interesting. Yeah, like it makes sense when you spell it out like that. Obviously those platforms are all about revenue as well. So how do they grow their revenue? And that would
Well,
make
they've got the
sense.
audiences,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And you think about a traditional e-com platform, a company now, whether they're born D2C or it's a retailer, they have a platform with all their products, and they and just as rapidly that the e-com platforms or platform e-com industry has exploded, just as rapidly it's become archaic.
yeah,
So, 15, 20 years ago, we were talking about the death of brick and mortar and how terrible brick and mortar is. Well, that hasn't happened. And I'm not saying the same thing about e-com websites, but just as rapidly, the e-com website has become quite archaic. I know for a fact one of the world's biggest retailers knows that their platform has a finite life cycle. They know it's going to get to the point where they just cannot, you can't turn the Titanic, and you can't keep building and patching. There's got to be an evolution where you can actually, and the solution is to actually go to where the consumer is. So if you think about the e-com website, you're constantly spending social, SEO and search engine and all the marketing to pull those audiences to transact, email
yep,
marketing, everything. You're constantly pulling them to transact, or they come there of their own volition. Whereas, where are they? Their audiences are already somewhere. So let them transact where they are. And that if you don't want to let them transact there, you're going to have to fight the big platforms to do it, because they're going to hold them there, and that's the only way you're going to engage with their advertising in time, is you're going to have to let them transact there.
yeah. That's brilliant insights. It's very, very, very well put. And even that just sort of ties in nicely to what we were talking about. I guess just before we press record around podcasts, and you listen to the radio now, and it's quite disruptive, and there's too many ads, so you stay and you listen to podcasts. It sounds like the same thing's going to happen with those platforms. They're trying to keep you on there and keep you consuming. And as consumers, that's what our expectation is and will be shifting to is uninterrupted content to keep us happy, and then shop on platform.
Uninterrupted content with really seamless integrated shoppable moments, and not shoppable it is globally today, which is like select or an AI tool surfacing a product and then showing you all the different places where you could buy it and then clicking off. None of that isn't going to exist. What's going to exist is the fact that when you're actually presented with the product, you can click on it and transact right there, and you go back to consuming your content, and it's going to be effortless and seamless. And I'm not predicting this. I'm telling you what's coming because I'm working at a global level. I'm having these conversations, and the plans are already in place with major global e-com players.
Fantastic, mate. I love that. That's food for thought, mate. I really appreciate your time. Obviously, I wasn't aware you're opening up in New York, but obviously you've just announced the UK office. So
you've got an exclusive. You've got another. You've got the exclusive from the day before, and now you got another one.
Exactly. I better edit it and get it out quickly before it's announced on LinkedIn. But mate, sounds like Vudoo's going ahead leaps and bounds, and I'm looking forward to following that journey now that I've met yourself, and definitely keeping an eye on how that transition goes. And I can refer back to this podcast and say, geez, he was right. He was right here and here.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on board, mate. It's been great.
Perfect. No problems.